Tonight, we drift into a quieter world, where a veteran soldier of the guard receives a pair of boots made of buffalo leather and meets a royal huntsman in the forest, where the Holy Mother is hidden from a venomous adder by the whispering branches of a hazel bush, and where a poor fatherless peasant boy walks straight onward until he reaches the eternal wedding feast of heaven. So close your eyes and let the stories carry you far away into the quiet of the night. The old bachelor's nightcap. There is a street in Copenhagen with a very strange name. It is called Hisken Street, where the name came from, and what it means is very uncertain. It is said to be German, but that is unjust to the Germans, for it would then be called Hauschen, not Hisken. Hauschen means a little house, and for many years it consisted only of a few small houses, which were scarcely larger than the wooden booths we see in the marketplaces at fair time. They were perhaps a little higher and had windows, but the panes consisted of horn or bladder skins, for glass was then too dear to have glazed windows in every house. This was a long time ago, so long indeed that our grandfathers and even great-grandfathers would speak of those days as olden times. Indeed, many centuries have passed since then. The rich merchants in Bremen and Lübeck who carried on trade in Copenhagen did not reside in the town themselves, but sent their clerks who dwelt in the wooden booths in the Hauschen Street and sold beer and spices. The German beer was very good, and there were many sorts, from Bremen, Prussia, and Brunswick, and quantities of all sorts of spices: saffron, aniseed, ginger, and especially pepper. Indeed, pepper was almost the chief article sold here. So it happened at last that the German clerks in Denmark got their nickname of pepper gentry. It had been made a condition with these clerks that they should not marry, so that those who lived to be old had to take care of themselves, to attend to their own comforts, and even to light their own fires, when they had any to light. Many of them were very aged, lonely old boys with strange thoughts and eccentric habits. From this, all unmarried men who have attained a certain age are called in Denmark pepper gentry. And this must be remembered by all those who wish to understand the story. These pepper gentlemen, or as they are called in England, old bachelors, are often made a butt of ridicule. They are told to put on their nightcaps, draw them over their eyes, and go to sleep. The boys in Denmark make a song of it thus: "Poor old bachelor, cut your wood." Such a nightcap was never seen. Who would think it was ever clean? Go to sleep. It will do you good. So they sing about the pepper gentleman. So do they make sport of the poor old bachelor and his nightcap and all because they really know nothing of either. It is a cap that no one need wish for or laugh at. And why not? Well, we shall hear in the story. In olden times, Hauschen Street was not paved, and passengers would stumble out of one hole into another, as they generally do in unfrequented highways. And the street was so narrow, and the booths leaning against each other were so close together that in the summertime a sail would be stretched across the street from one booth to another opposite. At these times, the odor of the pepper, saffron, and ginger became more powerful than ever. Behind the counter, as a rule, there were no young men. The clerks were almost all old boys, but they did not dress as we are accustomed to see old men, represented wearing wigs, nightcaps, and knee breeches, and with coat and waistcoat buttoned up to the chin. We have seen the portraits of our great-grandfathers dressed in this way, but the Pepper gentlemen had no money to spare to have their portraits taken, though one of them would have made a very interesting picture for us now, if taken as he appeared standing behind his counter or going to church or on holidays. On these occasions, they wore high-crowned, broad-brimmed hats, and sometimes a younger clerk would stick a feather in his. The woolen shirt was concealed by a broad linen collar. The close jacket was buttoned up to the chin, and the cloak hung loosely over it. The trousers were tucked into the broad-tipped shoes, for the clerks wore no stockings. They generally stuck a table knife and spoon in their girdles, as well as a larger knife as a protection to themselves. And such a weapon was often very necessary. After this fashion was Anthony dressed on holidays and festivals, excepting that instead of a high-crowned hat, he wore a kind of bonnet, and under it a knitted cap, a regular nightcap, to which he was so accustomed that it was always on his head. He had 2 nightcaps, not heads. Anthony was one of the oldest of the clerks, and just the subject for a painter. He was as thin as a lath wrinkled round the mouth, and eyes had long, bony fingers, bushy gray eyebrows, and over his left eye hung a thick tuft of hair, which did not look handsome, but made his appearance very remarkable. People knew that he came from Bremen. It was not exactly his home, although his master resided there. His ancestors were from Thuringia and had lived in the town of Eisenach, close by Wartburg. Old Anthony seldom spoke of this place, but he thought of it all the more. The old clerks of Hauschen Street very seldom met together. Each one remained in his own booth, which was closed early enough in the evening, and then it looked dark and dismal out in the street. Only a faint glimmer of light struggled through the horn panes in the little window on the roof, while within sat the old clerk, generally on his bed, singing his evening hymn in a low voice. or he would be moving about in his booth till late in the night, busily employed in many things. It certainly was not a very lively existence. To be a stranger in a strange land is a bitter lot. No one notices you unless you happen to stand in their way. Often, when it was dark night outside, with rain or snow falling, the place looked quite deserted and gloomy. There were no lamps in the street, excepting a very small one, which hung at one end of the street before a picture of the Virgin, which had been painted on the wall. The dashing of the water against the bulwarks of a neighboring castle could plainly be heard. Such evenings are long and dreary unless people can find something to do. And so Anthony found it. There were not always things to be packed or unpacked, nor paper bags to be made, nor the scales to be polished. So Anthony invented employment. He mended his clothes and patched his boots, and when he at last went to bed, his nightcap, which he had worn from habit, still remained on his head. He had only to pull it down a little farther over his forehead. Very soon, however, it would be pushed up again to see if the light was properly put out. He would touch it, press the wick together, and at last pull his nightcap over his eyes and lie down again on the other side. But often there would arise in his mind a doubt as to whether every coal had been quite put out in the little fire pan in the shop below. If even a tiny spark had remained, it might set fire to something and cause great damage. Then he would pile from his bed, creep down the ladder, for it could scarcely be called a flight of stairs. And when he reached the fire pan, not a spark could be seen. So he had just to go back again to bed. But often, when he had got halfway back, he would fancy the iron shutters of the door were not properly fastened, and his thin legs would carry him down again. And when at last he crept into bed, he would be so cold that his teeth chattered in his head. He would draw the coverlet closer round him, pull his nightcap over his eyes, and try to turn his thoughts from trade and from the labors of the day to olden times. But this was scarcely an agreeable entertainment, for thoughts of olden memories raise the curtains from the past and sometimes pierce the heart with painful recollections till the agony brings tears to the waking eyes. And so it was with Anthony. Often the scalding tears, like pearly drops, would fall from his eyes to the coverlet and roll on the floor with a sound as if one of his heartstrings had broken. Sometimes, with a lurid flame, memory would light up a picture of life which had never faded from his heart. If he dried his eyes with his nightcap, then the tear and the picture would be crushed, but the source of the tears remained and welled up again in his heart. The pictures did not follow one another in order as the circumstances they represented had occurred. Very often, the most painful would come together, and when those came which were most full of joy, they had always the deepest shadow thrown upon them. The beech woods of Denmark are acknowledged by everyone to be very beautiful, but more beautiful still in the eyes of old Anthony were the beech woods in the neighborhood of Wartburg. More grand and venerable to him seemed the old oaks around the proud baronial castle, where the creeping plants hung over the stony summits of the rocks. Sweeter was the perfume there of the apple blossom than in all the land of Denmark. How vividly were represented to him in a glittering tear that rolled down his cheek. Two children at play, a boy and a girl. The boy had rosy cheeks, golden ringlets, and clear blue eyes. He was the son of Anthony, a rich merchant. It was himself. The little girl had brown eyes and black hair, and was clever and courageous. She was the mayor's daughter, Molly. The children were playing with an apple. They shook the apple and heard the pips rattling in it. Then they cut it in two, and each of them took half. They also divided the pips and ate all but one, which the little girl proposed should be placed in the ground. "You will see what will come out," she said. "Something you don't expect. A whole apple tree will come out, but not directly." Then they got a flower pot, filled it with earth, and were soon both very busy and eager about it. The boy made a hole in the earth with his finger, and the little girl placed the pip in the hole, and then they both covered it over with earth. "Now, you must not take it out tomorrow to see if it has taken root," said Molly. "No one ever should do that. I did so with my flowers, but only twice. I wanted to see if they were growing. I didn't know any better then, and the flowers all died." Little Anthony kept the flower pot, and every morning during the whole winter he looked at it, but there was nothing to be seen but black earth. At last, however, the spring came and the sun shone warm again, and then 2 little green leaves sprouted forth in the pot. "They are Molly and me," said the boy. "How wonderful they are, and so beautiful." Very soon, a 3rd leaf made its appearance. "Who does that stand for?" thought he. And then came another and another, day after day, and week after week, till the plant became quite a tree. And all this about the 2 children was mirrored to old Anthony in a single tear, which could soon be wiped away and disappear, but might come again from its source in the heart of the old man. In the neighborhood of Eisenach stretches a ridge of stony mountains, one of which has a rounded outline and shows itself above the rest, without tree bush or grass on its barren summits. It is called the Venus Mountain, and the story goes that the Lady Venus one of the heathen goddesses, keeps house there. She is also called Lady Halle, as every child round Eisenach well knows. She it was who enticed the noble knight Tannhauser, the minstrel from the circle of singers at Wartburg, into her mountain. Little Molly and Anthony often stood by this mountain, and one day Molly said, "Do you dare to knock and say, 'Lady Halle'?" Lady Halle opened the door. "Tannhauser is here." But Anthony did not dare. Molly, however, did, though she only said the words, "Lady Halle," loudly and distinctly. The rest she muttered so much under her breath that Anthony felt certain she had really said nothing. And yet she looked quite bold and saucy, just as she did sometimes when she was in the garden with a number of other little girls. They would all stand round him together and want to kiss him, because he did not like to be kissed, and pushed them away. Then Molly was the only one who dared to resist him. "I may kiss him," she would say proudly, as she threw her arms round his neck. She was vain of her power over Anthony, for he would submit quietly and think nothing of it. Molly was very charming, but rather bold. And how she did tease. They said Lady Halle was beautiful, but her beauty was that of a tempting fiend. Saint Elizabeth, the tutelar saint of the land, the pious princess of Thuringia, whose good deeds have been immortalized in so many places through stories and legends, had greater beauty and more real grace. Her picture hung in the chapel, surrounded by silver lamps. But it did not in the least resemble Molly. The apple tree, which the two children had planted, grew year after year, till it became so large that it had to be transplanted into the garden, where the dew fell and the sun shone warmly. And there it increased in strength, so much as to be able to withstand the cold of winter. And after passing through the severe weather, it seemed to put forth its blossoms in spring for very joy that the cold season had gone. In autumn, it produced 2 apples, one for Molly and one for Anthony. It could not well do less. The tree after this grew very rapidly, and Molly grew with the tree. She was as fresh as an apple blossom, but Anthony was not to behold this flower for long. All things change. Molly's father left his old home, and Molly went with him far away. In our time, it would be only a journey of a few hours, but then it took more than a day and a night to travel so far eastward from Eisenbach to a town still called Weimar, on the borders of Thuringia. And Molly and Anthony both wept, but these tears all flowed together into one tear, which had the rosy shimmer of joy. Molly had told him that she loved him more than all the splendors of Weimar. 1, 2, 3 years went by, and during the whole time he received only 2 letters. One came by the carrier, and the other a traveler brought. The way was very long and difficult, with many turnings and windings through towns and villages. How often had Anthony and Molly heard the story of Tristan and Isolde? And Anthony had thought the story applied to him, although Tristan means born in sorrow, which Anthony certainly was not. Nor was it likely he would ever say of Molly, as Tristan said of Isolde, "She has forgotten me." But in truth, Isolde had not forgotten him, her faithful friend. And when both were laid in their graves, one on each side of the church, the linden trees that grew by each grave spread over the roof, and bending towards each other, mingled their blossoms together. Anthony thought it a very beautiful but mournful story. Yet he never feared anything so sad would happen to him and Molly as he passed the spot, whistling the air of a song composed by the minstrel, Walter, called the Willow Bird, beginning, "Under the linden trees out on the heath." One stanza pleased him exceedingly. "Through the forest and in the vale, sweetly warbles the nightingale." This song was often in his mouth, and he sung or whistled it on a moonlight night when he rode on horseback along the deep, hollow way on his road to Weimar to visit Molly. He wished to arrive unexpectedly, and so, indeed, he did. He was received with a hearty welcome and introduced to plenty of grand and pleasant company, where overflowing wine cups were passed about. A pretty room and a good bed were provided for him, and yet his reception was not what he had expected and dreamed it would be. He could not comprehend his own feelings, nor the feelings of others. But it is easily understood how a person can be admitted into a house or a family without becoming one of them. We converse in company with those we meet, as we converse with our fellow travelers in a stagecoach on a journey. We know nothing of them, and perhaps all the while we are incommoding one another, and each is wishing himself or his neighbor away. Something of this kind Anthony felt when Molly talked to him of old times. "I am a straightforward girl," she said, "and I will tell you myself how it is. There have been great changes since we were children together. Everything is different, both inwardly and outwardly. We cannot control our wills nor the feelings of our hearts by the force of custom. Anthony, I would not for the world make an enemy of you when I am far away. Believe me, I entertain for you the kindest wishes in my heart, but to feel for you what I now know can be felt for another man can never be. You must try and reconcile yourself to this. Farewell, Anthony." Anthony also said, "Farewell." Not a tear came into his eye. He felt he was no longer Molly's friend. Hot iron and cold iron alike take the skin from our lips, and we feel the same sensation if we kiss either. And Anthony's kiss was now the kiss of hatred. as it had once been the kiss of love. Within 24 hours, Anthony was back again to Eisenach, though the horse that he rode was entirely ruined. "What matters it?" said he. "I am ruined also. I will destroy everything that can remind me of her or of Lady Hala or Lady Venus, the heathen woman. I will break down the apple tree and tear it up by the roots. Never more shall it blossom or bear fruit." The apple tree was not broken down, for Anthony himself was struck with a fever, which caused him to break down and confined him to his bed. But something occurred to raise him up again. What was it? A medicine was offered to him, which he was obliged to take a bitter remedy, at which the sick body and the oppressed spirit alike shuddered. Anthony's father lost all his property, and from being known as one of the richest merchants, he became very poor. Dark days, heavy trials with poverty at the door came rolling into the house upon them like the waves of the sea. Sorrow and suffering deprived Anthony's father of his strength, so that he had something else to think of besides nursing his love sorrows and his anger against Molly. He had to take his father's place, to give orders, to act with energy, to help, and at last to go out into the world and earn his bread. Anthony went to Bremen, and there he learnt what poverty and hard living really were. These things often harden the character, but sometimes soften the heart even too much. How different the world and the people in it appeared to Anthony now to what he had thought in his childhood. What to him were the minstrel's songs, an echo of the past sounds, long vanished. At times, he would think in this way. Yet again and again, the songs would sound in his soul, and his heart become gentle and pious. "God's will is the best," he would then say. "It was well that I was not allowed to keep my power over Molly's heart, and that she did not remain true to me. How I should have felt it now, when fortune has deserted me. She left before she knew of the change in my circumstances, or had a thought of what was before me. That is a merciful providence for me. All has happened for the best. She could not help it, and yet I have been so bitter and in such enmity against her." Years passed by. Anthony's father died, and strangers lived in the old house. He had seen it once again since then. His rich master sent him journeys on business, and on one occasion his way led him to his native town of Eisenach. The old Wartburg castle stood unchanged on the rock, where the monk and the nun were hewn out of the stone. The great oaks formed an outline to the scene which he so well remembered in his childhood. The Venus mountain stood out gray and bare, overshadowing the valley beneath. He would have been glad to call out, Lady Halle, unlock the mountain. I would fain remain here, always in my native soil. That was a sinful thought, and he offered a prayer to drive it away. Then a little bird in the thicket sang out clearly, and old Anthony thought of the minstrel's song. How much came back to his remembrance as he looked through the tears once more on his native town. The old house was still standing, as in olden times, but the garden had been greatly altered. A pathway led through a portion of the ground, and outside the garden, and beyond the path, stood the old apple tree, which he had not broken down, although he talked of doing so in his trouble. The sun still threw its rays upon the tree, and the refreshing dew fell upon it as of old, and it was so overloaded with fruit that the branches bent towards the earth with the weight. "That flourishes still," said he as he gazed. One of the branches of the tree had, however, been broken. Mischievous hands must have done this in passing, for the tree now stood in a public thoroughfare. "The blossoms are often plucked," said Anthony. "The fruit is stolen, and the branches broken, without a thankful thought of their profusion and beauty." It might be said of a tree as it has been said of some men. It was not predicted at his cradle that he should come to this. How brightly began the history of this tree, and what is it now, forsaken and forgotten, in a garden, by a hedge, in a field, and close to a public road. There it stands, unsheltered, plundered, and broken. It certainly has not yet withered, but in the course of years, the number of blossoms from time to time will grow less, and at last it will cease altogether to bear fruit. And then its history will be over. Such were Anthony's thoughts as he stood under the tree, and during many a long night, as he lay in his lonely chamber in the wooden house in Hauschen Street, Copenhagen, in the foreign land, to which the rich merchant of Bremen, his employer, had sent him on condition that he should never marry. Marry, ha ha. And he laughed bitterly to himself at the thought. Winter, 1 year, set in early, and it was freezing hard. Without a snowstorm, made everyone remain at home who could do so. Thus it happened that Anthony's neighbors, who lived opposite to him, did not notice that his house remained unopened for 2 days, and that he had not showed himself during that time, for who would go out in such weather unless he were obliged to do so? They were gray, gloomy days, and in the house, whose windows were not glass, twilight and dark nights reigned in turns. During these 2 days, old Anthony had not left his bed. He had not the strength to do so. The bitter weather had for some time affected his limbs. There lay the old bachelor, forsaken by all, and unable to help himself. He could scarcely reach the water jug that he had placed by his bed, and the last drop was gone. It was not fever, nor sickness, but old age that had laid him low. In the little corner where his bed lay, he was overshadowed, as it were, by perpetual night. A little spider, which he could, however, not see, busily and cheerfully spun its web above him, so that there should be a kind of little banner waving over the old man when his eyes closed. The time passed slowly and painfully. He had no tears to shed, and he felt no pain. No thought of Molly came into his mind. He felt as if the world was now nothing to him, as if he were lying beyond it, with no one to think of him. Now and then, he felt slight sensations of hunger and thirst, but no one came to him. No one tended him. He thought of all those who had once suffered from starvation of Saint Elizabeth, who once wandered on the earth, the saint of his home and his childhood, the noble Duchess of Thuringia, that highly esteemed lady who visited the poorest villages, bringing hope and relief to the sick inmates. The recollection of her pious deeds was as light to the soul of poor Anthony. He thought of her as she went about speaking words of comfort, binding up the wounds of the afflicted, and feeding the hungry, although often blamed for it by her stern husband. He remembered a story told of her, that on one occasion when she was carrying a basket full of wine and provisions, her husband, who had watched her footsteps, stepped forward and asked her angrily what she carried in her basket, whereupon, with fear and trembling, she answered, "Roses, which I have plucked from the garden." Then he tore away the cloth which covered the basket, and what could equal the surprise of the pious woman to find that by a miracle everything in her basket, the wine, the bread, had all been changed into roses. In this way, the memory of the kind lady dwelt in the calm mind of Anthony. She was as a living reality in his little dwelling in the Danish land. He uncovered his face that he might look into her gentle eyes, while everything around him changed from its look of poverty and want to a bright rose tint. The fragrance of roses spread through the room, mingled with the sweet smell of apples. He saw the branches of an apple tree spreading above him. It was the tree which he and Molly had planted together. The fragrant leaves of the tree fell upon him and cooled his burning brow. Upon his parched lips, they seemed like refreshing bread and wine. And as they rested on his breast, a peaceful calm stole over him, and he felt inclined to sleep. "I shall sleep now," he whispered to himself. "Sleep will do me good. In the morning, I shall be upon my feet again, strong and well. Glorious, wonderful, that apple tree planted in love now appears before me in heavenly beauty." And he slept the following day, the third day, during which his house had been closed. The snowstorm ceased. Then his opposite neighbor stepped over to the house in which old Anthony lived, for he had not yet showed himself. There he lay, stretched on his bed, dead, with his old nightcap tightly clasped in his two hands. The nightcap, however, was not placed on his head in his coffin. He had a clean white one on then. Where now were the tears he had shed? What had become of those wonderful pearls? They were in the nightcap still. Such tears as these cannot be washed out even when the nightcap is forgotten. The old thoughts and dreams of a bachelor's nightcap still remain. Never wish for such a nightcap. It will make your forehead hot, cause your pulse to beat with agitation, and conjure up dreams which would appear realities. The first who wore old Anthony's cap felt the truth of this, though it was half a century afterwards. That man was the mayor himself, who had already made a comfortable home for his wife and 11 children by his industry. The moment he put the cap on, he dreamed of unfortunate love, of bankruptcy, and of dark days. "Hello, how the nightcap burns," he exclaimed as he tore it from his bead. Then a pearl rolled out, and then another, and another, and they glittered and sounded as they fell. What can this be? Is it paralysis or something dazzling my eyes? They were the tears which old Anthony had shed half a century before. To everyone who afterwards put this cap on his head came visions and dreams which agitated him not a little. His own history was changed into that of Anthony till it became quite a story, and many stories might be made by others, so we will leave them to relate their own. We have told the first, and our last word is don't wish for a bachelor's nightcap. She was good for nothing. The mayor was standing at his open window. He was wearing a dress shirt with a dainty breastpin in its frill. He was very well shaven, self-done, though he had cut himself slightly, and had stuck a small bit of newspaper over the cut. Listen, youngster," he boomed. The youngster was none other than the washerwoman's son, who respectfully took off his cap as he passed. This cap was broken at the rim so that he could put it into his pocket. In his poor but clean and very neatly mended clothes, and his heavy wooden shoes, the boy stood as respectfully as if he were before the king. "You're a good boy, a well-behaved lad," said the mayor. "I suppose your mother is washing down at the river, and no doubt you are going to bring her what you have in your pocket. That's an awful thing with your mother. How much have you there?" "A half pint," said the boy in a low, trembling voice. "And this morning she had the same continued the mayor. No, it was yesterday, answered the boy. 2 halves make a whole. She is no good. It is sad there are such people. Tell your mother she ought to be ashamed of herself. Don't you become a drunkard, but I suppose you will. Poor child, run along now. And the boy went, still holding his cap in his hand, while the wind rippled the waves of his yellow hair. He went down the street and through an alley to the river, where his mother stood at her washing stool in the water, beating the heavy linen with a wooden beater. The current was strong, for the mill's sluices were open. The bedsheet was dragged along by the stream and nearly swept away her washing stool, and the woman had all she could do to stand up against it. I was almost carried away, she said. It's a good thing you've come, for I need something to strengthen me. It's so cold in the water. I've been standing here for 6 hours. Have you brought me anything? The boy drew forth a flask, and his mother put it to her lips and drank a little. Oh, that does me good. How it warms me. It's just as good as hot food, and it isn't as expensive. Drink, my boy. You look so pale, and you're freezing in your thin clothes. Remember, it is autumn. Ooh, the water is cold. If only I don't get ill. But I won't. Give me a little more and drink some yourself, but only a little drop, for you mustn't get used to it, my poor dear child. And she walked out of the water and up onto the bridge where the boy stood. The water dripped from the straw mat that she had tied around her waist and from her petticoat. I work and slave till the blood runs out at my fingernails, but I do it gladly, if I can bring you up honestly, my sweet child. Just then came an elderly woman, poorly clad, lame in one leg, and with an enormously large false curl hanging down over one of her eyes, which was blind. This curl was supposed to hide the eye, but it only made the defect the more conspicuous. The neighbors called her Limping Marin with the curl, and she was an old friend of the washerwoman's. You poor thing, she cried, slaving and toiling in the cold water. You certainly need something to warm you a little, and yet the gossips cry about the few drops you take. And soon, all that the mayor had said to the boy was repeated to his mother, for Marin had overheard it, and it had angered her to hear him talk so to the child about his own mother and the few drops she took, because on that same day the mayor was having a big dinner party with many bottles of wine, good wine, strong wine. Many will drink more than they should, but they don't call that drinking. They are all right, but you are good for nothing. What did the mayor really say, that child? Asked the laundress, her lips quivering. So you have a mother who is good for nothing. Perhaps he's right, though he shouldn't say so to a child. But I mustn't complain. Good things have come to me from that house. Why, yes, you were in service there when the mayor's parents were alive. That was many years ago. Many bushels of salt have been eaten since then, so people may well be thirsty, laughed Maren. The big dinner today at the mayor's would have been postponed if everything hadn't been prepared. I heard the news from the porter. A letter came an hour ago telling them that the mayor's younger brother in Copenhagen is dead. Dead, cried the laundress, turning as white as a ghost. What does it matter to you? Said Maren. Of course you must have known him since you worked in the house. Is he really dead? He was the best and kindest of men. Indeed, there aren't many like him. Tears were rolling down her cheeks. Oh my God, everything is going around. That's because I emptied the bottle. I couldn't stand so much. I feel so ill. And she leaned against the fence for support. Good heavens, you are ill indeed, said Maren. Try to get over it. No, you really are sick. I'd better get you home. But the washing there, I'll take care of that. Here, give me your arm. The boy can stay here and watch it till I come back and wash what's left. It's only a few pieces. The poor laundress's legs were trembling under her. I've stood too long in the cold water with no food since yesterday. I have a burning fever. Oh dear Lord, Jesus, help me to get home. Oh my poor child. And she wept. The boy cried too, as he sat alone beside the river, guarding the wet linen. The two women made their way slowly, the washerwoman dragging her shaky limbs up the little alley and through the street where the mayor lived. Just as she reached the front of his house, she sank down on the cobblestones. A crowd gathered around her. Limping Maren ran into his yard for help. The mayor and his guests came to the windows. It's the washerwoman, he said. She's had a bit too much to drink. She's no good. It's a pity for that handsome boy of hers. I really like that child. But his mother is good for nothing. And the washerwoman was brought to her own humble room, where she was put to bed. Kindly, Mar hastened to prepare a cup of warm ale with butter and sugar. She could think of no better medicine in such a case, and then returned to the river, where although she meant well, she did a very poor job with the washing. She only pulled the wet clothes out of the water and put them into a basket. That evening, she appeared again in the washerwoman's miserable room. She had begged from the mayor's cook a couple of roasted potatoes and a fine fat piece of ham for the sick woman. Maren and the boy feasted on these, but the patient was satisfied with the smell. For that was very nourishing, she said. The boy was put to bed in the same one in which his mother slept, lying crosswise at his mother's feet, with a blanket of old blue and red carpet ends sewed together. The laundress felt a little better now. The warm ale had given her strength, and the smell of the good food had been nourishing. "Thank you, my kind friend," she said to Maren. "I'll tell you all about it while the boy is asleep. He's sleeping already. See how sweet he looks with his eyes closed. He doesn't think of his mother's sufferings. May our Lord never let him feel their equal. Well, I was in service at the counselors, the mayor parents, when their youngest son came home from his studies. I was a carefree young girl then, but honest, I must say that before heaven. And the student was so pleasant and jolly. Every drop of blood in his veins was honest and true. A better young man never lived. He was a son of the house, and I was only a servant, but we became sweethearts, all honorably. A kiss is no sin after all, if really love each other. And he told his mother that he loved me. She was an angel in his eyes, wise and kind and loving. And when he went away again, he put his gold ring on my finger. After he had gone, my mistress called me in to speak to me. She looked so grave and yet so kind, and spoke as wisely as an angel indeed. She pointed out to me the gulf of difference, both mentally and materially, that lay between her son and me. Now he is attracted by your good looks, but that will fade in time. You haven't received his education. Intellectually, you can never rise to his level. I honor the poor, she continued, and I know that there is many a poor man who will sit in a higher seat in the kingdom of heaven than many a rich man. But that is no reason for crossing the barrier in this world. Left to yourselves, you two would drive your carriage full tilt against obstacles until it toppled over with you both. Now I know that Eric the glove maker, a good, honest craftsman, wants to marry you. He is a well-to-do widower with no children. Think it over. Every word my mistress spoke went through my heart like a knife. But I knew she was right, and that weighed heavily upon me. I kissed her hand, and my bitter tears fell upon it. But still, bitterer tears fell when I lay upon my bed in my own room. Oh, the long, dreary night that followed. Our Lord alone knows how I suffered. Not until I went to church on Sunday did peace of mind come after my pain. It seemed the work of providence that as I left the church, I met Eric himself. There were no doubts in my mind now. We were suited to each other, both in rank and in means. He was even a well-to-do man. So I went straight up to him, took his hand, and asked, "Do you still think of me?" "Yes, always and forever," he said. "Do you want to marry a girl who likes and respects you, but does not love you?" "I believe love will come," he said, and then we joined hands. I went home to my mistress. The gold ring that her son had given me, I had been wearing every day next to my heart, and every night on my finger in bed. But now I drew it out. I kissed it until my lips bled, then gave it to my mistress and told her that next week the banns would be read for me and the glove maker. My mistress took me in her arms and kissed me. She didn't say I was good for nothing, but at that time I was perhaps better than I am now, for I had not yet known the misfortunes of the world. The wedding was at Candlemas, and for our first year we were quite happy. My husband had a workman and an apprentice with him, and you, Maren, were our servant. Oh, and such a good mistress you were, said Maren. I shall never forget how kind you and your husband were to me. Ah, but you were with us during our good times. We had no children then. I never saw the student again. Oh, yes, I saw him once, but he didn't see me. He came to his mother's funeral, and I saw him standing by her grave, looking so sad and pale. But that was all for his mother's sake. When his father died later, he was abroad and didn't come to that funeral. He didn't come here again. He became a lawyer, and he never married. I know. But he thought no more of me, and if he had seen me, he would certainly have never recognized me ugly as I am now. And it is all for the best. Then she went on to tell of the bitter days of hardship when misfortune had fallen upon them. They had saved $500, and since in their neighborhood a house could be bought for $200, they considered it a good investment to buy one, tear it down, and build again. So the house was bought, and the bricklayers and carpenters estimated that the new house would cost $1,020. Eric had credit and borrowed that sum in Copenhagen. But the captain who was to have brought the money was shipwrecked, and the money lost. It was just then that my darling boy, who lies sleeping there, was born. Then his father had a long and severe illness, and for 9 months I even had to dress and undress him every day. We kept on going backward. We had to borrow and more. One by one, all our possessions were sold. And at last, Eric died. Since then, I have worked and slaved for the boy's sake, have gone out scrubbing floors and washing linen, done coarse work, or fine whatever I could get. But I was not to be better off. It is the Lord's will. He will take me away and find better provisions for my child. Then she fell asleep. In the morning, she seemed better and decided she was strong enough to return to her work. But the moment she felt the cold water, a shivering seized her. She grasped about convulsively with her hands, took one step forward, and fell. Her head lay on the dry bank, but her feet were in the water of the river. her wooden shoes, in each of which there was a handful of straw, were carried away by the current. And here she was found by Maren when she came to bring her some coffee. A message had come to her lodging that the mayor wanted to see her, for he had something to say to her. It was too late. A doctor was summoned. The poor washerwoman was dead. "She has drunk herself to death," said the mayor. The letter that had brought the mayor the news of his brother's death also gave a summary of his will, and among other bequests, he had left $600 to the glovemaker's widow, who had formerly served his parents. The money was to be paid at discretion in large or small sums to her and her child. There was some nonsense about love between my brother and her, said the mayor. It's just as well she's out of the way. Now it will all come to the boy, and I'll place him with some honest people who will make him a good workman. And on these words, our Lord laid his blessings. And the mayor sent for the boy, promised to take care of him, and told him it was a lucky thing his mother was dead. She was good for nothing. They carried her to the churchyard, to a pauper's grave. Maren planted a little rose tree on her grave, while the boy stood beside her. "My darling mother," he said, as the tears started from his eyes. "Is it true that she was good for nothing?" "No, it is not true," said the old woman, looking up to heaven. "I have known it for many years, and especially since the night before she died. I tell you, she was a good and fine woman, and our Lord in heaven will say so too. So let the world say, she was good for nothing." A cheerful temper from my father. I received the best inheritance, namely a good temper. And who was my father? That has nothing to do with the good temper, but I will say he was lively, good-looking, round and fat. He was both in appearance and character, a complete contradiction to his profession. And pray, what was his profession and his standing in respectable society? Well, perhaps, if in the beginning of a book these were written and printed, many, when they read it, would lay the book down and say, "It seems to me a very miserable title. I don't like things of this sort." And yet, my father was not a skin dresser, nor an executioner. On the contrary, his employment placed him at the head of the grandest people of the town, and it was his place by right. He had to precede the bishop, and even the princes of the blood. He always went first. He was a hearse driver. There now the truth is out. And I will own that when people saw my father perched up in front of the omnibus of death, dressed in his long, wide black cloak and his black-edged three-cornered hat on his head, and then glanced at his round, jocund face, round as the sun, they could not think much of sorrow or the grave. That face said, "It is nothing. It will all end better than people think." So I have inherited from him not only my good temper, but a habit of going often to the churchyard, which is good when done in a proper humor. And then, also, I take in the Intelligencer, just as he used to do. I am not very young. I have neither wife, nor children, nor a library. But as I said, I read the Intelligencer, which is enough for me. It is to me a delightful paper, and so it was to my father. It is of great use, for it contains all that a man requires to know: the names of the preachers at the church, and the new books which are published, where houses, servants, clothes, and provisions may be obtained. And then, what a number of subscriptions to charities, and what innocent verses, persons seeking interviews and engagements, all so plainly and naturally stated. Certainly a man who takes in the Intelligencer may live merrily and be buried contentedly, and by the end of his life will have such a capital stock of paper that he can lie on a soft bed of it, unless he prefers wood shavings for his resting place. The newspaper and the churchyard were always exciting objects to me. My walks to the latter were like bathing places to my good humor. Everyone can read the newspaper for himself, but come with me to the churchyard while the sun shines and the trees are green, and let us wander among the graves. Each of them is like a closed book, with the back uppermost, on which we can read the title of what the book contains, but nothing more. I had a great deal of information from my father, and I have noticed a great deal myself. I keep it in my diary, in which I write for my own use and pleasure, a history of all who lie here, and a few more beside. Now we are in the churchyard. Here behind the white iron railings, once a rose tree grew. It is gone now, but a little bit of evergreen from a neighboring grave stretches out its green tendrils and makes some appearance. There rests a very unhappy man, and yet, while he lived, he might be said to occupy a very good position. He had enough to live upon and something to spare. But owing to his refined tastes, the least thing in the world annoyed him. If he went to a theater of an evening, instead of enjoying himself, he would be quite annoyed if the machinist had put too strong a light into one side of the moon, or if the representations of the sky hung over the scenes when they ought to have hung behind them, or if a palm tree was introduced into a scene representing the zoological gardens of Berlin, or a cactus in a view of Tyrol, or a beech tree in the north of Norway. As if these things were of any consequence. Why did he not leave them alone? Who would trouble themselves about such trifles, especially at a comedy where everyone is expected to be amused? Then, sometimes, the public applauded too much or too little to please him. "They are like wet wood," he would say, looking round to see what sort of people were present. "This evening, nothing fires them." Then he would vex and fret himself because they did not laugh at the right time, or because they laughed in the wrong places. And so he fretted and worried himself till at last the unhappy man fretted himself into the grave. Here rests a happy man, that is to say, a man of high birth and position, which was very lucky for him. Otherwise, he would have been scarcely worth notice. It is beautiful to observe how wisely nature orders these things. He walked about in a coat embroidered all over, and in the drawing rooms of society looked just like one of those rich pearl-embroidered bell pulls which are only made for show. And behind them always hangs a good, thick cord for use. This man also had a stout, useful substitute behind him, who did duty for him, and performed all his dirty work. And there are still, even now, these serviceable cords behind other embroidered bell ropes. It is all so wisely arranged that a man may well be in a good humor. Here rests. Ah, it makes one feel mournful to think of him. But here rests a man who during 67 years was never remembered to have said a good thing. He lived only in the hope of having a good idea. At last, he felt convinced in his own mind that he really had one, and was so delighted that he positively died of joy at the thought of having at last caught an idea. Nobody got anything by it. Indeed, no one even heard what the good thing was. Now I can imagine that this same idea may prevent him from resting quietly in his grave. For suppose that to produce a good effect, it is necessary to bring out his new idea at breakfast, and that he can only make his appearance on earth at midnight, as ghosts are believed generally to do. Why then, this good idea would not suit the hour, and the man would have to carry it down again with him into the grave. That must be a troubled grave. The woman who lies here was so remarkably stingy that during her life she would get up in the night and mew that her neighbors might think she kept a cat. What a miser she was. Here rests a young lady of a good family who would always make her voice heard in society, and when she sang Mi manca la voce, it was the only true thing she ever said in her life. Here lies a maiden of another description. She was engaged to be married, but her story is one of everyday life. We will leave her to rest in the grave. Here rests a widow who with music in her tongue carried gall in her heart. She used to go round among the families near and search out their faults, upon which she preyed with all the envy and malice of her nature. This is a family grave. The members of this family held so firmly together in their opinions that they would believe in no other. If the newspapers, or even the whole world, said of a certain subject, "It is so and so," and a little schoolboy declared he had learned quite differently, they would take his assertion as the only true one because he belonged to the family. And it is well known that if the yard cock belonging to this family happened to crow at midnight, they would declare it was morning, although the watchman and all the clocks in the town were proclaiming the hour of 12 at night. The great poet Goethe concludes his Faust with the words, "May be continued." So might our wanderings in the churchyard be continued. I come here often, and if any of my friends, or those who are not my friends, are too much for me, I go out and choose a plot of ground in which to bury him or her. Then I bury them, as it were. There they lie, dead and powerless, till they come back new and better characters. Their lives and their deeds looked at after my own fashion. I write down in my diary, as every one ought to do. Then, if any of our friends act absurdly, no one need to be vexed about it. Let them bury the offenders out of sight and keep their good temper. They can also read the Intelligencer, which is a paper written by the people with their hands guided. When the time comes for the history of my life to be bound by the grave, then they will write upon it as my epitaph, "The man with a cheerful temper." And this is my story. So, the ABC book. Once there was a man who had written some new rhymes for the ABC book. 2 lines for each letter, just as in the old ABC book. He believed the old rhymes were too antiquated, that something new was needed, and he thought well indeed of his own rhymes. His new ABC book was still only in handwriting, and already it had been placed beside the old printed one in the great bookcase, where there stood many books, both of knowledge and for amusement. But the old ABC book didn't want to be a neighbor to the new one, and therefore had sprung down from the shelf, and at the same time had given the new one a push, so that it, as well as the old one, now lay on the floor, with all its loose leaves scattered about. The old ABC book lay open at the first page, and that is the most important page, for there all the letters, large and small, are displayed. That one page contains on it the essence of all the books that ever were written. It contains the alphabet, that wonderful army of signs which rules the world. Truly, a marvelous power they have. Everything depends on the order in which they are commanded to stand. They have the power to give life, or to kill, to gladden, and to sadden. Separately, they mean nothing but marshaled and ranked in word formations. What can they not accomplish? Yes, When God put them into man's thoughts, human strength became inferior to that which lay in the alphabet, and we yielded with a deep bow. Then they lay, now facing upward, and the cock, which was pictured at the big A of the alphabet, gleamed with feathers of red, blue, and green. Proudly, he puffed himself up and ruffled his plumage, for he knew how important the letters were, and that he was the only living thing among them. When he found the old ABC book had fallen open on the floor, he flapped his wings, flew out, and perched himself on a corner of the bookcase. There, he preened himself with his beak and crowed loudly and long. Every single book in the case, all of which would stand day and night, as if in a trance, when nobody was reading them, was roused by his trumpet call. Then the cock spoke out loudly and clearly about the way the worthy old ABC book had been insulted. Everything has to be new and different nowadays, he said. Everything has to be advanced. Children are so wise that they can read before they have even learned the alphabet. They should have something new, said the man who wrote those new verses sprawling there on the floor. I know them all by heart. He admires them so much that I have heard him read them aloud more than 10 times over. No, I prefer my own. The good old rhymes, with xanthus for X, and with the pictures that belong to them, and crow for them. Every book in the case here knows them very well. Now I'll read aloud these new rhymes. I'll try to read them patiently, and I know we'll all agree they're worthless. Adam had. Adam obeyed. He'd not have had to leave the garden where first dwelt he and Eve. B. Bank. B. The bank is a place where you put your money. The bee is an insect that gathers honey. Now that verse I find profoundly insipid, said the cock. But I'll read on. C. Columbus. Columbus sailed the ocean to the distant shore, and then the earth became twice as big as before. D. Denmark. About the kingdom of Denmark. There's a saying which goes, God's hand protects it, as every Dane knows. That many people will consider beautiful, said the cock. But I don't. I see nothing beautiful about it. But I'll go on. E. Elephant. The elephant has a heavy step, though young in heart and full of pep. F. Face the moon. Above feels at its best when an eclipse gives its face a rest. G. Goat. It is easier to sail a boat than to teach manners to a goat. H. Hurrah. Hurrah is a word we often hear. How often does the deed merit such cheer? How will a child understand that? Said the cock. I suppose they'll put on the title page, ABC book for big people and little people. But the big people have something else to do, besides read the rhymes in ABC books, and the little people won't be able to understand them. There is a limit to everything. But to continue, Job, we have a job to do on earth, till earth becomes our final birth. Now that's crude, said the cock. Kitten. When kittens grow up, we call them cats, and hope they'll catch our mice and rats. Lion. The savage lion has much more sense than the arty critic's stinging offense. How are you going to explain that one to children? Said the cock. Morning sun. The golden morning sun arose, but not because of the cock's crows. Now he's getting personal, said the cock. But then I'm in excellent company. I'm in with the sun. Let's go on. Negro. Black is a Negro black as night, and we cannot wash him white. Olive leaf. The best of leaves. You know its name. The dove's olive leaf, of Bible fame. Peace. That peace may ever reign far and near, is indeed a hope we all hold dear. Queen. Quack. A queen is a lady of royal position. A quack is a fake and not a physician. Round. One may be round and well extended, but that doesn't mean one is well descended. Swine. Be not a braggart, be honest and true. Though many swine in the forest belong to you. Will you permit me to crow? Said the cock. It tries your strength, reading so much. I must catch my breath. And then he crowed shrill as a trumpet of brass, and it was a great pleasure to listen to, for the cock. I'll go on. Tea kettle, tea urn. The tea kettle in the kitchen will always belong, and yet to the tea urn it gives its song. Universe. Our universe will always be through ages to eternity. Now that is meant to be deep, said the cock. It's so deep, I can't get to the bottom of it. Washerwoman. A washerwoman will wash and scrub until there's nothing left but the tub. Now it's certainly impossible that he can have found anything new for X. Xantippe. In the sea of marriage are rocks of strife, as Socrates found with Xantippe, his wife. He would have to take Xantippe. Xanthus is much better. Yggdrasil. Under Yggdrasil tree, the gods sat every day. But the tree is dead, and the gods have gone away. Now we are almost through, said the cock. That's a relief. I'll continue on. Zephyr. Zephyr in Danish is a west wind so cold it penetrates fur and skin, we're told. That's that. But that's not the end of it. Now it will be printed, and then it will be read. It will be offered in place of the noble old rhymes in my book. What says this assembly? Learned and not so learned. Single volumes and collected works. What says the alphabet I have spoken? Now let the others act. The books stood still, and the bookcase stood still. But the cock flew back to his place at the capital A in the old ABC book and looked proudly around. I have spoken well, and I have crowed well. The new ABC book can't do anything like that. It will certainly die. In fact, it's dead already, for it has no cock. 5 peas from a pod. There were once 5 little peas, nestled snugly within a single green pot. Everything around them was green. The pod, the stalk, even the soft light that filtered through their tender walls. And so, in their small and happy world, they believed that all of creation must surely be green too. And for them, it truly was. The pod swelled in the summer sun, rocking gently on its stem as warm winds brushed the field. The peas within it grew and dreamed, sitting in a straight row like brothers, shoulder to shoulder, content and curious about the life that was theirs. Outside, the sun's golden warmth poured down, while cool drops of rain washed the pod clean and made it glisten like emerald glass. Inside was peace, a soft cradle where light and darkness took turns like faithful watchmen. Days passed, seas turned, and the peas grew larger, wiser, and more thoughtful. They began to wonder if there might be something beyond the pod, some grander mystery waiting outside their green shell. Shall we always sit here? One whispered, his voice round and mellow. I fear I might grow hard if I stay too long in one place. I feel there must be something beyond, something vast, something calling to us. The others murmured in agreement, though none could truly imagine what lay outside. They only knew the gentle rocking, the hum of bees, and the soft glow that filled their home. Time flowed on. The pod grew older, and one morning the peas awoke to find everything turned yellow. The whole world is becoming yellow, they said, and since their world had always been what they saw, they were certain it was so. Then came a sharp tug. The pod shuddered. It was plucked from the vine. Human hands carried it away, and soon it lay in the pocket of a jacket among other full, ripe pods. Now something will happen, the peas whispered. we shall be opened soon. Now we shall see who among us will go farthest, said the smallest pea, trembling with excitement. Yes, now the great adventure begins. Let happen what may, said the biggest, calm and brave. Crack the pod burst open beneath a child's eager fingers, and 5 shining peas rolled out into the bright sunlight. They sparkled like jade beads in the little boy's hand. Perfect peas for my pea shooter. He laughed, and in a moment, one was fitted into the barrel. Now I'm flying into the great wide world, cried the first pea joyously. Catch me if you can. And off it went, vanishing into the sky. I'm going to the sun itself, shouted the second, proud and bold. That must be the finest pod of all. It flew its small heart full of daring. 2 others rolled upon the ground, dizzy and uncertain. We'll lie wherever we land, they decided lazily. Sleep comes easily to peas, but even they were soon scooped up and sent flying after the others. Let happen what may, said the last pea, humble and quiet. It was shot high and struck an old wooden board beneath a garret window. There, in a tiny crack filled with moss and soft dust, it came to rest. The moss closed gently around it, like a green blanket. Forgotten by all, but not by heaven, the pea whispered softly. Let happen what may. In that very garret lived a poor woman, strong of arm, weary of face, yet kind in heart. Each day she went out to scrub stoves, chop wood, and wash clothes, earning just enough to keep a small loaf on the table. In the narrow bed near the window lay her only child, a frail girl, pale as moonlight. For a year, she had been confined there, too weak to rise, hovering between life and death, like a candle flickering in the wind. My sweet one will soon go to her little sister, the woman often said softly. God once gave me 2, but he took one home. Perhaps he will not let them remain apart for long. Yet still, the sick girl lingered patient and quiet, her eyes calm as still water. One spring morning, when the air was fresh and full of birdsong, the mother opened the window to let in the sun. Light fell across the wooden floor and danced over the blanket. The girl gazed toward the lowest pane and said faintly, Mother, what is that green thing peeping through the window? It moves when the wind breathes. The woman came closer and smiled in wonder. Why, it's a little pea plant that has sprouted in the crack outside. Imagine that child, it has found its way to you. Now you have your own tiny garden. The bed was drawn nearer, so the girl could see the bright green leaves trembling in the sun. All that day, she watched the little vine, And when evening came, she whispered, "Mother, I think I shall get well. The sun has been so warm, and the pea is growing strong. I shall grow too, and see the sunshine with it." The mother smiled, though she did not truly believe. Yet her heart felt lighter. She propped the tender stem with a stick so it would not break in the wind, and tied a string from the windowsill to the frame to guide its climb. Each day it grew higher and greener, as though it heard the girl's prayers. "Look, it has a blossom," cried the woman one morning, and tears shone in her eyes. From that day, she believed her child would recover. Indeed, the girl's face grew rosier. She sat up by herself, gazing with bright eyes at her little pea garden. A week later, she could sit for hours, her thin hands folded, her heart swelling with joy. Outside the window bloomed a single, delicate flower, pink as dawn. She bent and kissed it, and it seemed to her like a festival. "Our Lord Himself planted the pea," said the mother, smiling through tears. "He made it grow to bring hope and healing to my blessed child." And what of the others? The first pea that cried. Catch Me If You Can landed in a rooftop gutter and was swallowed by a pigeon. The two lazy peas shared the same fate, yet in feeding the birds, they had served a purpose after all. The proud one that boasted it would reach the sun fell too into a gutter, where it soaked in dirty rainwater until it swelled and burst. "I am magnificent," it declared. "No pea has ever grown so large. Surely I have gone farther than all the gutter full of filth and vanity," agreed completely. But high above them, at the humble garret window, the fifth pea stood green and strong, crowned with a blossom. Beside it, the once sick girl now stood upright, her cheeks touched with the blush of health, her hands folded in thanksgiving. She looked at the flower as one looks at a small miracle. The world outside still went on with its noise and rain and sorrow. But in that little room, there was sunlight, gratitude, and the quiet smile of faith. And in the mossy crack beneath the window, the pea that had whispered, "Let happen what may," had in its own small way changed a life. Two maidens. Have you ever seen what road pavers call a maiden? I don't mean a young woman with ribbons in her hair, but that humble wooden creature that helps make the very streets we walk upon smooth and firm. She is made wholly of wood, broad and heavy, at the base bound with iron hoops to keep her strong, and at her upper slender end runs a wooden handle, like a pair of outstretched arms. Through those arms, the workmen guide her, and down she falls, again and again, stamping the stones into the earth with patient rhythm. Such is the life of a maiden. In the tool shed behind the yard, two of these maidens once stood side by side among a company of shovels, measuring tapes, rakes, and wheelbarrows. The air smelled of tar and dust, and sunlight streamed faintly through the high windows, glimmering upon the polished handles and rusty spades. The two maidens had stood there for many a season, scarred by honest labor, proud of the work that had given them purpose. Yet lately, a rumor had begun to stir, a dreadful rumor, whispered first by the shovels and repeated by the wheelbarrow himself, that they were no longer to be called maidens at all. Some new rule, it was said, had been made among the pavers. From now on, their proper title was to be stamps, or more formally, hand rammers. It was the latest and supposedly most correct expression in the refined vocabulary of the trade. Now among us, humans, there are certain people ladies, chiefly, who call themselves emancipated. They are headmistresses and midwives, ballet dancers and milliners, nurses and teachers, women who wish to stand on equal footing with men. And in this same spirit of pride and self-respect, the two maidens of the yard considered themselves akin to these emancipated women. They would never, under any circumstance, surrender their good old name and be labeled with a title that turned them from persons into mere objects. Maiden is a human name, said the elder, with a firm knock against the floorboards. But a stamp or a hand rammer, that is a thing, a nameless tool like a nail or a stone. I will not be a thing. That would be an insult to my dignity. My betrothed would end our engagement. At once, cried the younger. She was engaged, as everyone knew, to a magnificent ramming block, a towering machine of iron and oak, who drove great stakes deep into the earth. His work was grander, heavier, but akin to hers, and she admired him with all the strength of her wooden heart. He fell in love with me as a maiden, she said. He will never love a stamp, and so I shall not let them change me. As for me, added the elder with resolute pride, I would sooner have both my handles splintered and my iron bands broken than bear such a name. But the wheelbarrow, who prided himself on being quite the gentleman of the yard, rolled forward with a creak. You two are behind the times, he said pompously. It is very common to be called maidens. Too simple, too ordinary. Stamp sounds refined, official even. It belongs to the same family as seal. You see, think of the royal signet, the seal of the state. That is a distinguished relation to have. Were I you, I would abandon the old name with gratitude. Never, said the elder, shaking her head till her handle rattled. I am too old to begin life anew under another name. You do not understand what is called the European necessity," sighed the measuring tape, who fancied himself a philosopher. "We must all adapt to progress, my good friends. We must limit ourselves and conform to the age. If the law says a maiden shall henceforth be called a stamp, then a stamp she must be. There is a measure for everything, even for names." "Well," said the younger, with a sigh that made her joints creak, "if I must be something else, then I'd rather be called Miss. That at least sounds cousin to maiden. I'd rather be chopped up for firewood and cast into the furnace," declared the old one fiercely. Soon the time for talk was over, for work awaited them. The maidens were loaded with ceremony into the wheelbarrow, which clattered down the yard to the street. The sun shone hot on the paving stones as they were set to their task. Yet when the foreman called them stamps, both shuddered. Maid, they cried each time they struck the ground, the sound echoing like a heartbeat beneath the stones made. But they never finished the word. They stopped themselves, remembering the decree. Still in the secret language of their hearts, they spoke to each other as maidens, cherishing the memory of the good old days when names meant what they were meant to mean, and when a maiden was proud to be a maiden. In the end, their stubbornness cost them dearly. The mighty ramming block, that grand machine of which the younger had once dreamed, broke off their engagement entirely. "I cannot ally myself," he declared coldly, "with a stamp or a hand rammer," and thus she was left alone, a maiden in spirit, though condemned by the world to bear a new name she despised. Yet both remained steadfast to the last standing, side by side in the shed, long after the others had worn out or rusted away. For though their labels changed, their hearts of wood were true, and in that steadfastness lay all their dignity.